Hi everyone. All right, so this is going to be our first attempt at online learning using YouTube since schools are closed due to the coronavirus. What we're going to be doing today is the time class assignment that we started before the schools closed, but we never actually had the time to review. So we're just going to go through how to actually make that class. In the next video, I'll show you different ways that we can use that class, and then we're going to move on to new topics. All right, so let's get that going. All right, so you see I have open up in front of me that assignment. You'll see all the information was here. We wanted these member variables, hour, minute, and second as integers. We wanted these member methods, the constructors, default and parameterized, accessors, those get methods, mutators, those set methods, and a method called display that will show the time on the console. And we also wanted to make sure that our constructors and mutators only accepted hours from 0 to 23 and minutes from 0 to 59. So let's get that started. First thing we're going to do is add a new file, which you'll see up in that top left corner. That'll give me a file1.java. I'm going to rename that to time.java. Okay. In this time, I'm going to create the class, the public class, time. We're making it public so that this file, the contents of this file can be used elsewhere. And we're naming it time, the same as the tab and the class. We want to make sure that it's case sensitive because Java is a case sensitive language, and if you're going to have a public class in a file, that public class should be named the same name as the file. Things that we've gone over, but maybe you're a little rusty because we haven't been in the building for a bit. All right, so first thing we're going to do is make these member variables. And if I make spelling mistakes or verbal gaffes, throw a comment. I'll try to edit it or put a little overlay saying oops later on. But yeah, so member variables, we have the hour, the minute, and the second, just like what was displayed over here. Now, when you're writing your classes, you always want to make sure that your member variables are private. And it might not always be necessary, but it's good practice. And the reason is because we don't want our user to inadvertently break our class or break an object of the class by giving its member variables bad information. For example, this class right here that we're writing is to model a digital clock time. All right, so that's why if you saw here, we wanted the display function to output HHMMSS, just like what you would see on a digital clock. Like if it was 9:35, it would say 0935, and then I don't know, however many seconds it is, 21. Let's say it's 21 seconds deep. We don't want the user to uh, have bad times here. Oh, I put minute after seconds. It's not like it won't matter, but for me, I like it to be in that order. Um, so yeah, if the user gave us a minute of 65, that wouldn't make sense in a digital clock, right? You wouldn't see that in the minute section of a digital clock. It's nonsensical. Or if they gave us an hour of 43, again, there isn't a 43rd hour in the day. Doesn't make sense. So we want to make sure that these member variables are private so they don't access them directly, and instead they have to access them through our functions. Hopefully my mic being away from my face did not make this difficult to hear. Oops. So let's write those member functions. Or methods. I always say functions, I mean methods. They're the same thing, but I want to be consistent with my terminology. So these member methods, most of them, since we want our users to be able to use them, will be public. So this first one is going to be a constructor. I'm going to call this public time. And here you just can set each of your member variables to some default value. For me, I'm going to choose 0 as my default value for hour, 0 as my default value for minute, and 0 as my default value for second. All right, so this right here, this was our default constructor. All right, now I want to write a parameterized constructor, and we'll just have the one that, accepts 3 parameters. Let's say int h, int m, and int s. So the user can provide 3 arguments for that. And we want this to be where the user can give us times for our hour, our minute, and our second. Now, as I said before, we have a certain range for these that are acceptable. The acceptable hours go from 0 to 23, and the acceptable minutes and seconds go from 0 to 59. And if they misuse this, what we want to do is we need to throw an exception. We want to, give the user in the console some indication that they did something less than perfect. So what we can do here is just at the end of our function declaration, we can say that this function throws an exception. And we don't have to pick any particular exception at the moment. If you wanted to, you can actually even create your own exception, but that's for later. We'll talk about that another time or in AP Java. All right, so the first thing we wanted was to get in the hours from that int h from our user. And what we need to do is we need to check to see if the hours that they're giving us is in the appropriate range. So we're going to check to see if h, the value that our user gave for that parameter, is greater than or equal to 0, because we don't want a negative hour value, and if the h is less than or equal to 23. If those are both true, then we can say, well, our hour can be equal to h. If they are not both true, however, what we need to do is we need to throw an exception. So let's do that. Let's say, well, else throw a new exception, and this can have whatever text that we want, whatever text we think will be most useful to the user so they know, oh, I did a bad thing. And I'll just say something simple like, hours must be in the range of 0 to 23. Let me zoom out for there. Good. All right, so that's great. Now this process is going to be very similar for minute and second. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this, make my life easy, paste it, and now let's talk about minute. And for that, all I'm going to do is change these. So it says if m is greater than or equal to 0, well, yeah, we don't want a negative minute. Here, the upper limit for m, our minute value, is 59. And if both of those things are true, then we'll set our minute equal to m. And again, if they give us a bad value, we can say minutes must be in the range of 0 to 59. Whew. And again, well, if we just copy this, because this is even closer to what our seconds thing looks like, we can just change this m to an s, this m to an s, and change this to second equals s. Last bit, we change the exception message. And so now we have this nice parameterized constructor that throws exceptions when our user gives us bad information. Now I'm just going to quickly run this real quick to see that there are no errors in the console. Great. If you have errors in your console here, pause the video, go back and see how we wrote everything, make sure that there's no errors with what you have, and then come back to whatever time you paused on. All right. Let's just get our accessors, all right, and our mutators, and that one last member method. So accessors, these are our get methods. Very simple. We want to make these public. All of our member variables are integers, so int will be the return type for these member methods. And I'll do get hour. All you want to do is return the member variable that this is named after. So I'm going to return the hour. And that's it. Super simple. And again, because I am lazy and I want to save time, I'll just copy and paste those. Change this to minute. Change this to minute. Change this to second. Change this to second. All right. And now for our mutators, our set methods, we want to just simply change the values in our object. Well, we want this to be public so that the user can use this. Since we're changing the values that are in our object, we're not actually looking to get anything out of this. So the return type here will be void. Hopefully you remember that. And we'll call this one set hour. Now again, since we're giving information to our object, we want to have a parameter that we can provide arguments. So for hour, I'll make that parameter int h. And what I'll do here is actually, I'm just going to steal what I wrote in my constructor because this is already pretty solid. So I'll just copy that, paste that in there, and make sure that I indicate that this throws an exception. All right. Now that I've written the set hour method, I'm just going to, do the other ones pretty similarly. I'm going to copy what I wrote for the minute in my constructor. I'll make a public void set minute int m that throws an exception, and then paste in that code that we wrote from our constructor. And then lastly, go back up to here, copy what was in my constructor for these seconds, and then write public void set second that throws an exception, and again just paste that in there. All right, real quick, I'm just gonna run this, make sure that I didn't make any errors, because you know me, guys. All right, everything's fine. And then we're just gonna make our last member method, which was the display method. All right, and what this method is going to do is just display our time in digital clock format on the console. All right, and this is going to be a public function so that our users can use this. It's going to be a void function because we're just displaying to the console. We're not actually sending any information one way or the other. And yeah, we're just going to call this display. And we don't really need parameters for this because we're just using the information already in our object. Okay. All right, and now for this, we want to make sure that we output 2 digits per member variable. But sometimes our member variables are not 2 digits. If the hour was 9 minutes, and the minute was 15, and the second was 5, we still want a 0 in front of that 9 for the hours. The 15 is fine because that's a 2-digit value. And then the 5 seconds, again, we want a 0 in the front. Well, how can we do that? In this display function, we can have a string called time that will be where we actually build this time format. And then we'll just have a few conditional statements that make our life very easy, that just check to see if our values are double digits. And to do that, I could just say, well, if hour is less than 10, because that means it's either 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my time string, concatenate a 0 to the end of that. All right, so far our time string is empty. So when you put a 0 on the end of that, that'll be right up in the front. And then what we can do is we can simply say for our time, concatenate the hour and a colon. All right, so if our time was, let's say, 12, if our hour was 12, we would skip this because it's a double-digit number, and then we would just say time concatenates the end of it 12 colon. All right, if we had some time less than 10, like 5, it would say, all right, throw a 0 on the end of it, then throw the 5, and then the colon. So it would say 05 colon. All right, so far so good. Okay, so I actually want to do the same for a minute here, so I'm just going to copy this, paste it down here, change these hours to minute, and in fact, I'm going to want to do the same for a second. So I'm just going to copy this and change the hour to second. All right, I also don't want that colon on the end, we just want the 2 colons. So this should be all well and good for the display. And then all we have to do is say system.out.println. We'll just do print the time. And let's just run this to make sure that there are no errors. All right, and then if we go to the main.java, let's create a time object. So I'll say time, we'll just call it t. Set it equal to a new time object, and let's use the parameterized constructor here. I'm going to, say that the hour is 4, the minute is 15, and the seconds are 7. And then if I say t.display, we should see that time in our console. Let's take a look. Okay, so we see this error down down here that says we have an unreported exception. That's because this is error sensitive code. So what we're going to do is we're going to try, just wrap that in a try statement, catch some exception E, and then we can just output something went wrong. All right, let's take a look. And you see we have our time printed, 04, 15, 07, everything's kosher. All right, so that's how you write the time.java class. I'd love for you guys to make sure that your time class works in Replit and to submit it. You'll also see down below in the description a link to the to the Discord channel, and you'll see in the assignment posted today a form, a Google form. Please make sure that you go into that Google form and just fill it out so that I can take attendance for today. All right. Thanks. Have a great day.